It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Okay, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand. My name's Lewis, and I'm the host of the show. Regular listeners might have noticed there was a word missing from that stock standard weekly intro. Oh, that's the word. Hasn't been weekly lately. Apologies. It's not the recording and the editing and the getting them up online. It's actually at the moment the schmoozing, the chatting up, the convincing people to come on in, people with busy lives, people who perhaps don't know me as well as some of the first 39 guests. So if you can lend a hand, if you do know someone who might be great, if you think you might be a good guest, drop us a line at verbalhighs@gmail.com. Episode 40 today. We'll get to that in a second. But for now, I guess this is a kind of a soapbox for me. It's like a luxury version of social media where people don't kind of yell back. Although you're welcome to message me. But I think the key thing I want to talk about this week is sexual assault allegations that have been in the media, mainly people's response to them, a lot of which has been quite baffling. Where to start? We've had Weinstein, the obvious one. A friend posted up something about that. Another Facebook acquaintance posted, 2 of those women are crazy. I know personally because I work in the industry in Hollywood. They said 2 of these people are crazy. Let's think about that. One of them, archetypical crazy. One of them wears a road cone on her head and daily and is convinced she's a unicorn. The other one is vindictive, crazy, and out to ruin someone's career. Okay, so 2 of them are crazy. Let's just say that. What about the other? Is it 15 plus now? We're getting to sort of Cosby levels of allegations. What about where they are in their careers? What they're worth? Whether it's worth their time to make a false allegation? Yada 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 yada. That's the other one that I hear that baffles me. Oh, they're doing it for the money. Or the fame. I heard that with this week's news that 2 people prominent in the New Zealand hip-hop scene, a DJ and I think a rapper, producer, have been accused. One of them, DJ CXL. Someone posted in response to that, the woman's just after a settlement, after money. Strange target to go after, a musician in New Zealand who's not really a Dobbin or a Finn financially. Strange motivation. I'm going to come forward. I'm going to get the police involved. I'm going to accuse these 2 men of this act. I'm going to be put through the court of public opinion. I'm going to be cross-examined in a real court. I'm going to have my own integrity questioned. Doing it for the money. And then another one that came up was, same person as the one earlier on, friend of a friend, was, I've known many women for years and no one's ever said anything like this to me. I've known women well. And then the other person chimed in, actually, when I was flirting with you when I was 21, while we were, making dinner as a flat and, perhaps watching The Simpsons as it would have been in the 90s, it never really came up. I never really felt the need to discuss the fact that I've had more than, 3 or 4 incidents in my life before I was 21 of men doing things awful to me. Sorry, I didn't tell you. Male flatmate. And I'll tell you what, my thought response to that was, you know what? First poster, I actually have had women very special to me in my life, friends, partners, confide in me, completely awful things that have happened to them that, surprise, surprise, they didn't report. Another one with the CXL case, leave him alone. He has a baby. There you go, that's news. Having young children exonerates you from being put through the court system for a sex crime. What a world we live in. And the final one, which is going to be the only one that I really spoke of today, that just really summed up this whole system we live in, the way people think and so on that local court case tip was, so this woman, for people who don't know, is accused these two men of, let's just say it, both having sex with her at the same time, not a consensual threesome. She was at a level of intoxication where she couldn't. One comment on a thread I read: never trust a woman. We hope we evolve as humans. Hopefully these sort of things coming out lead to a world where there is, at least market change, I would hope. How do I lift this now? My guest this week runs a great little radio station in Auckland that broadcasts around New Zealand on Freeview and globally on the internet. It's a community / low power FM station called Base FM. His name's Dylan C. He's a very well regarded DJ around Auckland. He talks about where he's going next. Very much a bio piece. I tried to chuck around the convo a bit, but Dylan, good on him. Wanted to really put on the record where he comes from and how he's ended up where he was. I think it's a really interesting convo, and I think what really comes through, to tribute to Dylan's personality, is he has a lot of gratitude for those that have helped him along the way. I asked for some fundraising for next year's internet subscription. I pointed out it wasn't that I couldn't afford it. I just wanted it would be lovely to have a gesture of support from the listeners. I've already thanked Felix and Jane for their very generous donation, and then I had another very generous donation from a gent named Tama. Thanks, Tama. Did a little bit of an internet snoop on you. I could only find a collections officer in Brisbane. If that's you, keep collecting those bills. In Brisbane, I'm not sure it is, but someone I don't know from Adam, I can't thank you enough. It's really lovely. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. That's about it. I had a few other things to talk about. Oh, that's right. There was an event at the museum the other day for $35 about learning about privilege, which I thought was hilarious. I'm sure there was a huge cross-section of Auckland there. Like the show, Verbal Hires on the Twitter, Verbal Hires Podcasts on the Facebook, verbalhires.com is the website, verbalhires@gmail.com. If you'd like to contact me, I'm about 3 or 4 episodes behind for a target of 50 in a year. A year will be mid-November. Let's see how we go, folks. I'll post y'all another one tomorrow. Here is Mr. Dylan C.
Verbal high straight down from up above.
Phone has been put on silent.
Oh yeah, I'm a bloody amateur. Get that where it's comfortable.
So okay.
So when was the last?
Check. How's that?
No, that's amazing. Am I recording? Yeah, great timber. I can actually. Some guests I actually have to turn up. I'll turn you down a little. You're in the radio game. So when was the last time you chatted with someone for 80 minutes in a row?
It would have been probably at an after party.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
So nowhere on the record.
Yeah, nothing recorded, I don't think.
So this is going to be a treat for those who are interested in listening to us talk shit for 80 minutes. So how'd the day start, man?
My day started without an alarm, which is always nice. Tuesdays, I don't start my day till midday, so Monday, Tuesdays are the 2 days, and Sunday, that I don't have to set a morning alarm. So
what happened to breakfast?
I always do that Wednesday to Friday.
Yeah.
So having that Tuesday morning off is good. So yeah, this morning start without an alarm.
Yeah.
Got up, put the dog out.
Got a dog, nice.
Got a dog. His name's Freddie.
Yeah.
He always needs to be put out front yard to have a little run around and go to the bathroom after a night's sleep.
Have you gone from flatting life to domestic life?
In a way, yeah.
Living with a dog and a girlfriend? Or probably that's the wrong order, really, eh? Living with your partner and your dog? I better say you are. My guest today is Dylan C., Auckland-based DJ, program director for, if you're not from Auckland, a community station we've got here called Base FM, and co-host of the Base FM Breakfast Show. Also does a show on Saturday called The Headstrong, which has been going
Since day dot, the Headspace, since May 2004. So
13 years.
yeah.
And it goes without saying, is a strong supporter of local music. Kia ora.
It's good to be here.
So, what's up with Breakfast on Base at the moment? You only do some of them, and then you and Ian do some of them, and then he does some on his own, or
Yeah, it's always been. I guess I've been doing breakfast now for, damn, how long? At least 8 years,
yeah,
and
it's
it was
a long time.
maybe a little bit longer, and it was kind of by accident. I was never meant to be the breakfast host.
Yeah,
At the time, Chip Matthews was the host with DJ Butterfingers, who was also from the Open Souls, the two of them,
Yeah.
and that was Chip Buddy Breakfast.
ah.
Then Butterfingers stepped out, and Tyra Hammond stepped in for a couple of days, and I filled in the other days. So it was like Chip and two guests at different times of the week. And then for a solid, I guess, 5 years, it was just me and Chip. But I still kept on to those days of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because I already had a Monday afternoon show that I had to present as well. So I didn't want to be
Yeah.
Monday mornings and Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
So
How did you cope? How
Yeah.
did you cope, and how do you cope with Bricky, as well as, I mean, your other sort of, well, your occupation is not only running the half running the station, but DJing at night. So how do you? Are you just one of those people like Helen Clark who only has to sleep like 4 hours
pretty
session?
much.
Really?
It's like
So you don't do 8 hours, 9 hours?
only if it's maybe if I Saturday night if I haven't played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I
Um,
start to just lose track of thoughts, and I'm an 8 hours guy, man.
Some days it's really hard, but it's just something I've gotten used to. So I guess doing breakfast for 8+ years and pretty much DJing on the mornings that I start, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday breakfast. Traditionally, the nights that I DJ, Wednesday
Yeah, that's what I was
through to
meaning.
Friday. So it's like they do become really long days. I've gotten better in the last year and a half in actually having like a little kind of
Just
power
doing
nap
that, yeah.
before I head out, especially on a Friday if I have a 12 o'clock start.
You wouldn't say disco nap. You'd say a bass nap.
Little bass nap, a little downbeat nap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's just practice. Like the more you do it, the easier it gets. But
Do you occasionally have the
Yeah.
odd occasional 4 a.m. finishes for those sets, and then for the show at what, 7?
yeah,
Yeah.
I know last week in particular, I DJ'd Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Finished 1 o'clock on the Wednesday, 3 o'clock on the Thursday. And then obviously by the time I kind of packed up, it's 3:15 before I'm jumping in my car. It's, about 3:45 by the time I'm
It's
getting
almost
in
worth
bed.
just driving here and waiting till the show starts.
Well, that had been done a few times.
yeah.
In the old studio,
Yeah.
I definitely, finish up around that time and just
Oh boy.
pass out on the couch for a few hours and get up and present the show. But yeah, so I guess 3.5 hours is, I've done it on less. I've done it on no sleep before.
So I'm like a dog, got dog in a bone with this. So your day is something like you do the breakfast show on the days you do it. I think you said Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then you put in, I'd imagine, at least 40 hours a week being program director.
Pretty
for
much,
Base.
yeah.
And then roughly, on average, how many hours a week out playing as well?
I have cut back actually in
Oh,
the
good on you.
last year and a half, but I'm still averaging around, I guess, 9 hours as an average DJing a week out.
And what was it at its most push to the limit when playing out? I remember you saying you were doing an 8-hour one place on a Friday night for a while.
I think 2015 was the year in which I did 200 gigs in the year.
Wow.
And at that time, I was single. I didn't have anyone to be kind of responsible for except for myself. So
Yeah.
I just pretty much said yes to anything that I could.
Yeah.
And it was something I actually really enjoyed. That constantly busy and constantly playing different places. I guess there was a larger pool of venues at that point that I was playing as well.
What's happened there is Auckland Hospo sort of fallen back a bit, has it?
Well, in a way, there's definitely a lot of pretty key venues that not only had a good music policy, but kept, had a good roster of DJs that kept us not necessarily playing every week, but a couple of times a month. So,
is it that more newer audiences just kind of want trashier music now, to not put too fine a point on it?
No, I think there's a lot more DJs. There's a little larger pool of DJs.
Yeah.
So in a way, you've got to kind of protect the ones that you've got. You've got to try to never basically have a bad set, which would then make a bar owner or the booker go.
Because you got there's people nipping at their heels, nipping at your heels.
And all it takes is one off night for them to kind of just say, maybe we'll give this young guy who's been hitting us up to do it for a reduced rate
for $10 an hour and a panini. So did you? Because I remember when I did Brekkie, a couple of years there in a row. Obviously completely live radio like bases. And I was DJing out a lot at night as well. I got to a point where I was kind of a ninja with it. Like I just had everything down to the millisecond. So you must have been, I'd imagine 2015, you were just like, a sensei.
Well, I guess when I look back on it now, it was a great year because I feel as though some of my most memorable sets have rolled out between, the last 2.5 years. So from 2015 in particular was a really busy year, but I guess because I was doing it so often that I was pretty much just on top of my game as far as the technical side of mixing and your approach when you step into a venue and know what you want to create with a vibe. So I guess it was like that apprenticeship has been, I've finished my apprenticeship well and truly, and it's that, I can't remember who it is who came up with this theory, but
the 10,000 hours
thing? The 10,000 hours thing. And I reckon by 2015, a cumulative, from the time I started DJing in early 2000s to 2015, I reckon I would have hit my 10,000 hours expert level by some point during that year.
It'd be amazing to know how many hours that you'd actually done something, eh? But I guess even that amount of gigs that you knew from 2015 kind of... that gives you some indication. So it sounds like the pie graph of the music part of the pie graph's pulled back a bit. Still the obviously major focus, if you like. Where did this all start, man? Like, have you just been? Is it like the whole music family thing, or from year donut to teenage years to now, or?
Yeah, well, I guess musical family definitely. My dad was a singer, a touring muso, and then pretty much a full-time musician up until maybe his kind of mid to late 40s. So
is he still around, or he's just retired from music?
Retired from music.
Yeah.
But for me, it was always that was his job. So he'd be home during the days, and then he'd be packing the station wagon with the PA and a guitar, and he'd be off to gigs.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
So I guess and growing up in that musical family where, pretty extensive record collection, extensive tape collection at that point, stereos in pretty much every room in the house kind of set up. But
was he a rock guy, a funk guy, a jazz guy?
Well, he was a covers guy. He played covers, but he did release. The collection was pretty eclectic, really.
Yeah.
I guess it was always current at the time. So I remember just being exposed, really into, say, Duran Duran in the early 80s and INXS, and discovering his Stevie Wonder Hotter Than July LP and finding, like that kind of stuff. But he would always be putting on different music, but I do owe him, he did plant the musical seed for me. I remember being 11 years old, and he sat me down, and it was actually my bedroom had his stereo in it, and all the different components and 4 speakers and fully...
All the road gear was in the other room, so stereo had to go in yours.
He sat me down in the sweet spot, in the stereo sweet spot. I was like, okay, sit here, and he put this record on, and it was Van Halen Eruption.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, he did have eclectic taste.
yeah, and because he kind of knew that I was already getting into, say, a bit of Guns N' Roses and
Yeah.
a bit of rock stuff, and he was like, okay, listen to this. And basically, it's less than I think it's about 1:50, that piece of music, Eddie Van Halen
Yeah.
just shredding on a guitar.
Yeah.
And that musical moment just, it flipped my world. It changed my life forever, because from that point on, I was so blown away by the sound that was coming out of the speakers, and it was this guy on a guitar, that instantly I was like, I want to play guitar. And
I had this weird
that-
moment
yeah.
around that age with Eddie Van Halen, and I didn't, like, I was, you know how analytical and nerdy and stuff now, you don't really, well, I didn't know how to vocalize it back then or whatever, but since then I've learned how to vocalize it. I just kept rewinding the needle on Thriller, not Thriller, sorry, on Beat It, on Eddie Van Halen's lead break.
Guitar solo,
and I'm
yeah.
like, I don't know if I like vocalized this in my head at the time, but what it was like, that is the perfect lead break. It's just like the perfect length. It's got the perfect little bit of every style of guitar at that time. You know, all the accents are perfect.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So was he basically saying, hey, you know, Guns N' Roses are okay, kid, but here's the OG.
Well, no, not necessarily. I think he had something up his sleeve that he was like, I know you like what you like, but I'm just going to blow you away with something.
Yeah, here's some foundation stuff, and I'll blow you away.
And the thing is, like, he wasn't necessarily a big Van Halen fan,
No.
but he knew that I was going to appreciate this
Yeah.
2-minute piece of music.
Yeah.
And going forward from that point,
he DJ'd to you, Dylan.
yeah, I was never a big Van Halen fan from that point on
Yeah.
either, but that was the seed, and that's what
And so
really
you
triggered it.
picked up the guitar, and were you one of those like practice hours a day from 11, 12 years old guys? or-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I was bought my first guitar tab notation book was Master of Puppets,
Nice.
Metallica.
Yeah. All that shit's
would-
online
would-
now. It's crazy.
Would buy all the Guitar Player and Guitar World magazines all
Yeah.
through my kind of teenage years and just read it from cover to cover. So not even just the rock and the metal stuff, but
Yeah.
I'd read about the country players, because there was always something in those articles that was of interest, not only as a guitarist but as a musician. So
Well, also, I guess even
yeah.
like without the internet, I mean, this is 1,000 interviews over this sort of thing, but I'll point it out anyway. It's like it's also just a source of information about different scenes.
yeah.
Just a little snippet about the country scene in the States is kind of like, where else are you going to find that? You know, where are we? Are we in Tauranga? Well, I'm trying to remember where you grew up.
Okay, so I was born in Sydney, and
Yeah.
my parents had moved from New Zealand to Sydney in the early 70s.
Yeah.
So I was born there, and my siblings. We
Oh, so you're actually Australian. Technically.
Australian born.
Yeah, nice.
I've-
No, but your parents
yeah.
are Australian, not Kiwis that moved to Australia.
No,
Australians that moved, yeah.
my parents are Kiwis
The Kiwis.
that moved to Australia,
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah, perhaps that's why you're Māori.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but I was there until I was 13. On my 13th birthday, I got my first guitar.
Yeah.
Moved back to New Zealand when I was 13 and settled in Te Puke. Went to Te Puke High School,
Yeah.
which is where my grandparents on my mum's side were living at the time. So
Yeah.
Bay of Plenty was my high school teenage years. So, you know, going to the local high school, I wasn't a sports person at all. We'd spend, you know, lunch breaks in the music room.
Why are those guys kicking that ball around? What's the
Yeah.
point to that? That's what my pet does.
But you're right though. Like, it was hours and hours of
Yeah.
playing and listening, even just listening, just getting into the music. Like, for me, I remember you had to turn the lights off in order to and sit in that sweet spot within the stereo spectrum in order to really get music. And I remember basically that's how I listened to all the music I got, was getting into that sweet spot where you heard the right balance between left and right. Get into the music,
Yeah.
understand the spatial,
Yeah.
you know, where everything
The
sat
sonics,
within
the
mix.
sonics, the right
sonics,
spot
yeah.
to be. I think because when I started guitar, what actually held me back in hindsight was I had this guitar teacher who was just basically really un-rock and roll, really foundation, learning stuff really slowly. Like, to his credit, I learned how to read basic music. I still can today. But it was kind of plucking out, 12 notes in a row and arpeggio and da-da-da-da-da. Did you have a good kind of teacher, or were you just learning through, like, tabulation and stuff like that?
I guess when I was going back even further, when I was 8 years old, I learnt the flute in the primary school orchestra. So I started to read music at a very early age. When I started learning guitar, I had I guess I would say a tolerant music teacher in high school.
Yeah.
In which, if we played particular songs, let's say Metallica songs, with the two twin guitar parts, me and my friend Jeremy Hardman would kind of play guitar together. She'd hear the musicality of it when we'd do twin guitar parts.
That's pretty progressive for back then. Yeah.
So she was really tolerant, and she understood the musical merit of the music. So she allowed us to then, when we had music projects, be able to follow through with that instead of it going, oh no, go to the keyboard and play these chords. She was happy with us having our guitars and
so
doing
is it
that
fair
way.
to say that the schools in Aussie were a bit better resourced? Because I don't think our school would have even owned a flute back here in New Zealand. But come back to when I was
I don't really know. Like,
we had like a guitar with a couple of strings and about a half a drum kit when I was at high school, and that was in Welly.
I don't know. I think progressively got better. Like, I'm sure if you went to a high school now, you'd be amazed at what the facilities are
totally.
within music. And I'm sure that from where I was in, and maybe fifth form, it was probably a big step from where it had been for the a generation before me. So
yeah,
I guess what we did.
Although I think there was less money around in our generation, that whole Tomorrow's School thing. I went back to WHS in Wellington. It was like Starship Enterprise. Nuts, man.
Yeah.
Amazing. Radio station, Apple Macs everywhere, production suites, blah, blah, blah. Amazing. So from high school, you go... I did a little bit of recce on you today.
No, that's okay.
You went to... did a music degree somewhere.
Yes, so from high school, was already playing in bands and stuff, but I knew I wanted to study music in some form because I was like, this is what I want to do. I've decided in the teenage, my mum was fully supportive of like, whatever you want to do. And at the point, I was very interested in not only playing an instrument, but I started to really get into the idea of production and the recording, because ultimately, if you know both sides, then you have more complete control and freedom over what you can create, because you're not relying on someone else to run the controls. So at this point, I looked around. It was SAE in Auckland.
Yeah.
Pretty expensive at the time.
We're talking early mid-90s?
We're
90s.
We're talking 96 was my first year. My best mate, Jeremy Hardman, who I'd been playing guitar with, he went down to Greymouth and did Tai Putini Polytechnic.
Which is now Mains up here.
Which is now Mains, yep. So he did that in Greymouth. And I was like, I don't want to move to Greymouth. And
good move, Dylan.
Hamilton had just started up a music stream within its media arts. It's now called Wintec. At the time it was called Waikato Polytechnic.
And so you had a choice of Greymouth or Hamilton, so it's like, shit, Hamilton!
Basically, and Hamilton, when you're in the Bay of Plenty, Hamilton's pretty easy. It's an hour and a half over the ranges. So I moved to Hamilton, and I ended up doing and living in Hamilton for 4 years and studying for 4 years. By the second year, the Roger Westbury, the guy who was in charge of the studio, ended up giving us a key. So we had kind of 24-hour access. And, I was studying both the theory in full, as far as an instrumentalist and music theory.
So actually having to write compositions and, wow.
Yep, totally. Like full notation, air theory.
You remember it all? Some of it?
For me, the way I looked at music, it was a language in which it came really easy to me. So I guess I've always been pretty good at maths, and I saw music very much just as a mathematical thing, which I didn't have to try too hard in order to understand and be able to break it down. So,
but the notation side of it, I'm interested. Like, do you think it's is is it unnecessary kind of these days with tabulation, all that sort of stuff, and other ways to see stuff? Like, you think it's a little elitist, or it's just a means to an end to write stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just a tool. It means that if you have an idea for something,
You can jot it down.
you can just grab a pen and paper and go do and write notes, and that, if it's a melody, for instance, or if it's a rhythm, you can record that. I guess nowadays you have phones, but
What, to go?
to just hum into your iPhone and
Yeah,
record that as
yeah.
a voice
Yeah.
recording. But I think there's still great skill in being able to understand and break down and know exactly what makes a particular piece of music work. the
Oh, and
same.
those classical composers who'd compose multiple instruments, and then it's being played hundreds of years later. That's totally nuts. It's like
Yeah.
that's genius level anything.
And I guess the theory has always stuck with me, even though I don't apply it and I'm not actively playing an instrument. I hear music, and so many of those things I learnt stick with me in the way I appreciate music. Because sometimes I'll hear a track and it's progressing along, and it gets to a point where something's happened, and I'm like, oh, that note. And I'm like, why is that note so powerful?
Yeah.
It's because, and for me, the reason why it sticks out is because they didn't go to the most obvious
Yeah.
note which resolves,
Yeah.
the resolution at the end of a phrase. It was like the chord changed and the note went somewhere else, and it created this kind of tension, which I was like, oh, that was such a sweet moment.
Yeah.
And
It's not by the playbook. It's
yeah.
like, yeah.
And I guess if you wanted to write music and purposely include those moments without understanding how to get there, like some people may have just a great way of writing and be able to sing and hit those kind of moments, but I find there's something which once you've learnt the secret on how to do that, you can recognize it and you can recreate it in your own music.
I'll come back to you in a second. There is
Okay, cool.
there's no playing order in this, because I want to, and it's one of those, like asking what your favourite film is at the moment. There might put you on the spot a little, but whether or not, irrespective of whether they can, tape music or whatever, who do you think are the sort of gifted writers of music in New Zealand at the minute? Who do you think's just writing stunning music? Here we go.
Okay. Number
If you
one.
get left off this list,
Well,
just
no.
remember this is just a conversation.
First, that came to mind. No, I'm not this is no ranking.
Yeah.
Noah Slee.
Yeah.
Noah Slee is a vocalist and a songwriter. Originally from West Auckland, he was in a group called Specifics, and spent some time. Is now living in Berlin, overseas. Spent some time in Australia. I know he'd travelled a little bit into the States. He is one of those songwriters that hits those sweet spots.
Yeah.
He's got a great voice. The person he writes and his production is on some very now, but not. It's not trap, It's not trap, but production is on point and very kind of 2017.
Yeah, it's contemporary, but it's not cliched.
Absolutely, yeah. So straight up for me, the first person that comes to mind is Noah Slee.
Yeah.
And as a DJ, I'm dropping his tunes in wherever I can, because you never know when it's gonna,
So he makes beats and then he sings over them, kind of
But
styles.
he has
other singers.
he
and
has a
players
main
and-
producer in which he works with.
Yeah.
But he is still the writer.
Yeah.
So that's one person.
Yeah, that's enough.
Is that enough?
That's enough.
Yeah, all good. Okay, cool.
So back to you.
Yeah.
You wake up at 1 in the morning and go, oh, and anyway. So around that time, again, speaking of back in the day, it seems a given these days. Oh yeah, I'm going to get into the production side of things. Blah blah blah. I'm going to go and tweak knobs and blah blah blah. But well, not really, because there wasn't actually nearly as much gear around then and stuff. So what you're getting into was pretty esoteric. What sort of gear were you working on? I like these nerdy questions.
I guess.
Tape, got to be tape.
Okay, the very first class of our music production stream
8-track Fostex.
was winding up mic cables.
But that was a paper.
Yeah, it was like the first thing
6 credits.
was like, what we're going to do today is the tutor was like, I'm going to show you how to roll up cables.
My God. You know what?
And the thing is, like, it's still to this day, people do not know how to roll up cables.
You know what? This is so funny, dude. I am taking this third year audio paper at the moment, and I thought they'd think I was being a bit of a dick. I was showing them around the studio, and I was like, guys, this might seem real dumb. And I picked up and pointed because I had to put the cables back from the mic, and I was like, this is how you wind up a mic cable. And I was like, if you never do anything with audio following this, at least you have the best garden hose on the block.
Yeah.
And it's inside, outside, right? Inside, outside, inside, outside. Yeah.
Exactly. And
So that was 6 credits. Then what else?
That was the first thing. And from there, like, I don't know, it was live sound, it was studio recording, it was, they had, at that time, cassette 4-track rooms.
Yeah.
They're running recording to Alesis. Oh no, what was it? No, ADAT. The old VHS.
I totally know. Yep. That was digital. That was the future.
And mastering to DAT tapes.
Yep.
But I guess at that point I was working with a drummer, and he had this very large drum kit, 2 kick pedals and about 6 cymbals and splashes and multiple toms. So
metal?
It was a Danny Carey Tool freak. So still amazing drummer to this day. So we would go in and we'd set up and mic his drum kit, and we'd do that multiple nights in order for us to get a good sounding drum recording. So it was all about what microphones to use on what part of the recording process. At the same time, I was very kind of tone orientated with my guitar, so I had my pedals, and I had a Mesa Boogie DC-10 100-watt double 12 combo amp, as well as a Marshall stack, which I'd blend the 2 tones together until I had this massive tone. So
you still got the guitar, Rick? The gear?
I don't have amps, but I have a few guitar toys. I've still got a few guitars as well. Basically, it just got to the point where I don't care what aspect of the music side it is. I want to know about writing. I want to know about playing. I want to know about how do I get a good guitar tone. I want to know about signal flow. I want to know how to mix down the audio in the studio environment. I ended up doing also live sound, how to...
So it sounds like a good degree, Dylan, because I've been teaching at Mains about the last few months, and man, I've been so inspired, some of the students there. But point being is, my understanding is you have to kind of specialise there, and you can come back and do other stuff, and I'm sure there's a little bit of crossover, but it sounds like where you were was quite open and loose to you actually covering all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that means you have to do like live sound, or you have to do studio, or you have to do performance. There is some crossover. So it sounds like it was a good degree, man.
Yeah, well, basically it was 2 streams. One was a songwriting stream and one was a music production stream, and that's what they broke it down to. I ended up doing the first year, which was everyone did.
Yeah.
Second year I did songwriting. Third year I did second year production. And then I went back for a 4th year to do the third year songwriting. So it was like a bounce between. I did the second year twice in order to cover both streams and then decide what to do in my final degree year. So I guess that's why I got a foot in both doors. Yeah.
Would you say you were pretty much a mettler then?
I was when I started.
Yeah.
But I definitely that was the time in which I was exposed to a lot of new music. That's when I first heard the trip hop kind of sound.
Yeah.
Because this is 96 to 99 is when I studied. So hearing.
Were you at first a little bit like this shit, or do we, or do you like just being young? Sometimes you're like,
no, I wasn't.
I suppose you weren't that young, not yet.
I knew at that point, my sisters used to listen to R&B of the 90s, and that was what they got into, and I never really. I was like, it's not music; it's got no guitars in it.
Yeah, those rhythm volume comps.
Exactly, and for me it was like the trip and the rest.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely, my mind was wide open by the time I finished, just because having to study music and have not critique but really hear what your fellow students are doing and listening to just opened you to music that you never heard before, and you can appreciate it on its merits. And
Was it
Yeah.
kind of like Maine's, where I've noticed, because I had to take some of the bands out to a school tour the other day, and it was quite cool what they do. They get in this quite, I think it's whatever, early level paper, is regardless of whatever music you're into, they chuck you in a house band together. So like there'd be 3 different bands, but you got like the middle kid on guitar and like an R&B singer on vocals. You got to remember these kids are only like 16 to 18,
Yeah.
so they're really kind of probably quite stuck in their genres. And they basically say, "You guys work it out and see what you play." Was there that kind of cross pollinating?
No, it was up to the students if they wanted to form bands, and some
Yeah.
people just remained as singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
And some were strictly instrumentalists, so they'll just play with whatever just to be able to play.
So you graduate,
yeah.
you graduate, and you put your guitar on your shoulder, and your I always forget what they're called. That stick with the handkerchief on the back.
Oh yeah,
One of those.
No,
It's got a
what was
cool
it?
name. It's got a weird name. And you head to Auckland.
No, actually, at that point, I went down to Wellington
Ah.
because I'd finished studying, and the drummer who I had been playing with, he'd already moved down to Wellington, and I was like, I don't want to move to Auckland.
Yeah.
I finished studying, and I'm in Hamilton. It's the end of '99.
Yeah.
I'm going to the gathering, and after the gathering, I don't want to go back to Auckland.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving down to Wellington, and
Was
I-
the gathering quite an eye opener, or had you been to big dance gigs like that before?
before that, I'd seen Pitch Black
Yeah.
playing with Salmonella Dub a couple of times, and I'd been to a couple of raves out into, some farmland out of Hamilton.
Yeah.
At the point that, like it was kind of, I guess, very trance orientated around 98, 99. I'd never been to a drum and bass gig, but I had friends who had put me on to Bookham and the Art Core series. And
But
some
still
of that
not
stuff.
really that interested in what the DJ was doing or thinking you'd do it.
No, I never grew up wanting to be a DJ.
Yeah.
And that's why it's still quite surprising. No, that
I was done my 10,000 hours. Yeah.
I guess I like the vibe of Wellington. I'd visited a few times while I was studying.
The rain was challenging at that gathering.
Well, on the first day it was beautiful.
It was.
We came on site with the artists.
Mhm.
Had a friend who was performing, so I came on his ticket.
Mm-hmm.
We had the first day. The sun was shining. Got to really explore the site, and then when the festival officially opened up to the public, that's when the crowds came in, and it wasn't too bad to begin with. But then after 3
Do you
days,
remember do you remember one of the days? Because we're all stuck in the same place, man. It was either late morning or early afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
There was this little break in it when it felt like sun was going to come out, and everyone went, "Yeah!" And then it just rained again for another day or two.
Yeah.
And my other enduring memory are the people who really ate it, because I had this friend with quite well-to-do parents, so of course their tent was like the size of this room we're in, so you could stand up in there.
Ooh.
We had inflatable couches.
Luxury.
Imagine being able to stand up dry, and anyway, so my enduring memory is those poor people who didn't know what the weather was going to do, and they had those, I don't know, the little like two-person lying down dome tents, and they'd set them up in the ridges.
Yep.
And there was actually water. It was like a cartoon or something. I could see the water level in their tents up to the very tip, up
Yeah.
to the nipple of the tent, with their stuff floating on the top.
Yeah, on
Boy, man.
the first day that we got there when it was fine, we looked around and go, that's quite a cool spot.
Spot.
That's in the shade.
Yeah.
It's going to get quite hot. And we almost set up on one of those little dips, and instead we kind of gone and parked up by some other friends, and glad we hadn't.
Did you last till the end? That's the question with that festival with everyone. Eh? I wouldn't have if it wasn't for that tent, man.
I'm trying to think. Well, definitely there. We left on the afternoon of the first.
That's good effort.
Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't stay for the second night? No.
I actually can't remember.
So long ago.
But we were there for 3 nights.
I remember,
Yeah.
like, before that one, I mean, I was lucky that year. Like, just when
It's
you're...
all very
when,
hazy
When
now.
you're a kid and stuff, but the ones I went to before that, so the first one I played at was like... The first one after it was on train, so it must have been 95, 96. Well, 96, 97, there's a sticker on a box somewhere out there anyway. I went down after having played and stayed up all night in Wellington with, like, a really thin, long-sleeve top and a chocolate bar... and $50,
Yeah.
and like somehow survived it. Like no tent, no.
You could survive a week back in '96 on that.
But I'm talking about how cold it would
Yeah.
get there at night and stuff. Because for people who don't know, it was up on the top of this really quite mystical hill. Actually, it's that's a big gemstone under all that grass. Anyway, because it's so high up, you're pretty much at altitude. You're in the clouds, or even colder if it's no clouds on a clear night. And it would go from like baking late 20s to what? 7, you reckon? 6 in the middle of the night?
I don't know.
Cold.
Yeah, it was cold and it was wet.
So then you get back to Wellington.
Get back to Wellington.
You get your first record shop job.
Yeah, well, basically it was like, because at that point, still, I want to do something with music, carry on the journey, and I told myself I want to get a job either at Real Groovy or the Rock Shop.
Yeah.
So I figure Real Groovy, you get access to all the tunes, and Rock Shop, you get access to gear. So
And a discount in both
it
cases.
was either or, and it took me a while, but I ended up with the Real Groovy job. Shout out to Mark Thomas, the manager at the time.
Where's he now, Dylan?
He is in New Plymouth. He's running the what's the store down there? Vinyl Destination.
A record shop. Good
Yeah,
on him.
Yep, still got a record store there.
Yeah.
So Mark gave me a job at Real Groovy, and I basically learnt the ropes through the various people that were working there. The top of Cuba Street really started to. I guess that's when I started to really take notice of a lot more different genres, because you're hearing stuff in the store constantly new to your ears, even if it's kind of old.
I think Jen Halligan said to me of his time there around that time, fucking drum and bass. We couldn't get enough drum and bass, man. So that must have been a pretty major seller in the store.
I started working when that Ronnie Size Represent, the second album, came out.
Yeah.
And Mark Thomas would put it on at lunchtime, and he'd notice when it was playing drum and bass, people would just line up at the counter and just purchase whatever they had. And
What, to get out of there?
and it just whipped up people and friends who was like, got to buy this. I've got to buy something. So I was there for 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And obviously drum and bass was a big thing, but it was also the time of Trinity Roots releasing their first EP.
It was.
And the Loop magazine / CD compilations. And I guess other bands like Shehad had really hit their peak. They played at they did that Town Hall, sold out General Electric.
But you're right, that was when I think I'd left just around then, and I think it had gone from the scene that people who knew about, but sort of like all the dots started joining, and I think technology and sort of connecting with the rest of the world more started to take hold of and the kind of Wellington sound we talk about does come from that, like, very early 2000s onwards, eh?
And I felt that I was...
You're meeting all those guys coming into the shop?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the reason I got my job at Real Groovy is because the previous person who lost their job was Ricky Gooch.
Right.
Because he was spending so much time recording the first Trinity EP that he was, we've got to let you go.
Yeah.
And so there's a new position.
Yeah.
I think I got that position, so that was like, big ups, Ricky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like...
And then you ended up, you had quite a... Are you still DJing by now, bro?
No. So at this point, it was Wellington really influenced...
Oh, we've got heaps of time for the DJing.
What would become my kind of DJing thing. But I was still... I'd go out to a rock gig. I'd go see, say, a band like Product or something playing at Valve.
Yeah.
And then we'd go to Bass Frontiers and check out...
I've talked about this before.
Yeah.
That's right. Not many cities in the world where that happens, man.
And that was the norm.
And then you end up at a reggae sound system or something. Yeah.
You might go to Old Bodega.
Yeah.
And then you'd end up at some late night joint.
But then all the people, all the great musos from all those different scenes all come as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was that's the thing I loved about Wellington at the time. Yeah. I don't know if it's still...
I think it's, what do you call it, memorial? I got the word wrong. I think it's always like that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was just the culture. It was things like the package. That is, you get that every week. You unfold it and you see who's playing where.
Yeah.
But, okay, sweet, it's $5. Well, I guess it was the Upbeats playing for $2 at the Valve every Tuesday. So you have your Tuesday night drum and bass.
$2 beers, $2 drum and bass.
With the Upbeats, and then you'd have what else? I never went to Beats and Bubbles at Bodega.
I hosted that for a while.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Wellington really just fed into all styles. You're just soaking it up. Radioactive played a very important role in that as well.
Yeah.
Exposing me for the first time really to the kind of dub stuff, because it was still very much a flavour in which Active pushed. And it's something really to get your head around when you come from a different, sonically a different background, right? But when it connects and you get it,
You get it. But like anything else, there's a lot of shit stuff around. There's a lot of good stuff around.
So getting to the DJ thing, at this point, I was still in a band in the early years of Wellington. We'd done a few gigs. Our first gig was Old Bodega. We did a couple there.
Yeah.
Played at Valve. Played at Indigo at the time, which is now San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, stepped back from playing less guitar stuff and just going to late night out, going to gigs, DJs, checking out DJs. But I guess the people who really influenced me at the time, even though I, at this point, still don't want to be a DJ, DJ V, Zen, Clinton Smiley, who else was kind of Below, Paul Barrington,
Yeah.
as well as the Bass Frontiers guys like Sean,
Yeah.
D-Dog, Nico.
Sean's one of the most talented drum and bass DJs I've come across in the world. Period.
Absolutely.
Period.
Still one of my favourite NZ drum and bass DJ, without a doubt.
He's had internationals. I've heard tales of like them going, "Who's that guy?"
It gets, you look at the lineup,
Yeah.
it could be, okay, you've got this international playing, who's on support? Sean's on support.
Yeah.
They're the nights that you go early enough to catch the support. Whereas
Yeah.
other ones you'd be like, oh no, let's rock up at 1 o'clock because the international is not going to be out until 1:30. This is when bars would, stay out. You'd walk out and...
What do you think?
7 in the
What do you?
morning.
I mean, there's heaps of angles to it, bro. What do you think about the hours thing? I mean, on the civil liberties tip, I think it's nuts, and I think it's like, what's the word? Hypocritical when you can do stuff like gamble 24/7 and yada 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 yada. You're out there, man. You do those hours a lot. What do you think about the whole lockout laws thing? I did a podcast with Rob, who really,
Warner?
yeah, spent a long time on his own time as a PR expert.
Yeah.
I'm going through legal statutes and talking to police and blah 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 blah. I'm going off track a little. Point is, yeah, what do you think about all of that, man?
I would love if there were exemptions made
Yeah,
for particular scenes, and
they don't get it.
they don't get it.
Yeah.
But places like those clubs in which are music hubs, they're
Yeah.
not. The violence that spills out onto the street, they don't come from those venues.
Well, I don't know if I've seen what they call a king hit in all my years of
Of
playing
going to-
venues that we
no,
play.
No,
Yeah.
it's. I don't know. I miss the days in which you could be at a turnaround and it's 5 a.m. and you kind of go, maybe I should head off.
Yeah.
And then Manuel Bundy throws down an instrumental hip hop track at 90 BPM.
Yeah,
Suddenly, he fires up the dance floor on the most
yeah,
mellow boom bap, and you're like, those moments
yeah.
can't happen
And
now.
also, that's good use of
You
your
know?
time, because then you're going to be walking home in the sun, not the dark. You know?
you
Yeah.
pick up.
It's a whole like how much should getting a little bit political now, but like how much should the state be involved in our business? It's I kind of get it, and I get it from our crazy drinking culture and stuff. But it's like, Germany, Japan, these places with these different laws, it just seems to work.
Yeah, and I think also, I don't
But
know.
I'm with you. I sort of cut off your main idea, which I totally agree with, and that's the bit that where the penny won't drop. Is I think it's really hard explaining to essentially. I don't want to be like reductive, but a straight person, like that there isn't just one style of doing things
Yeah.
when you go out.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to, say, Neck of the Woods or Inc., actually don't know what other clubs really are on K
So
Road,
you
for
got
instance.
Red Bar. Apparently.
Those are the places in which, the doorman is so good. They deal with people on the way in, and if they're causing trouble, they make sure they're removed. And they do it in a way in which is not going to cause a fuss. They're going
No.
to be like, okay, it's a safe environment in here,
Yeah.
and that person there is creating some kind of random
Yeah.
energy, and they need to be removed.
Do you know Pa, who's been doing doors for years?
Yeah.
I haven't seen him around for a while. I thought he'd be great to get on the podcast, man. He'd have some great stories, man.
Him and Juddy.
Yeah.
Both of them when they were
I
working
wonder what happened to
Peugeot days.
Juddy, because he disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mourn the loss of those late nights
Yeah.
because there's a whole other economy around that as well. There's
Yeah.
all those people that work those hours, and a lot of bars sustained. Like they can make so much between the hours of 3 and 5.
Yeah.
for instance, you know, and then
And so people knock off from where they work. And now, I mean, I said this on Rod's podcast, and I've said it before, but and I'm preaching to the choir with you here, but in my days of playing a lot, which would have been Wellington, but then particularly peaked in Melbourne when I was probably doing like 4 nights a week, I preferred the post 1 a.m. slots because I would miss the kind of bullshit on the streets.
Yeah,
If I could get into town a little bit later, it'd just be nicer getting in, you know, blah, 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 blah. It's a funny old world.
Yep.
Where were we in your life? You're just about to start DJing.
Yeah,
Your favourite DJs in Wellington, you listed them off.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was my partner at the time. She wasn't really finding any work in Wellington for. She was an actress.
Yeah.
So she got a job in Auckland, and she moved up to Auckland. And it took me a few more months to convince me to do it.
Because you're having such a good time down there.
So I was like,
yeah.
Wellington's just going off, but she moved up in February. I moved up in July, in order for me to kind of tie up loose ends. But at that point, those last 6 months in Wellington, met up with Mikey Tucker from Loop Recordings. Ended up living with him for those last 6 months.
You guys are great friends. I'm great friends with Mikey. I'm going to cut you off here because he's got a good sense of humour. You gave me the best description of him I have ever heard.
I did.
The human whirlwind.
Oh, Mikey. All credit to Mikey. He gets things done.
That's right.
I guess working with Mikey living with Mikey at the time was quite a cool experience because I already had a few years of really kind of getting to know the local music releases, and I was a fan of the magazine and the CDs. And I moved in with him, and he was like, "Oh, this guy really digs the stuff I've been doing."
Would you just find him on the accommodation guide or something?
Yeah,
Right.
No. It was like 4 or 5 in the morning. Barbadega, me, him, Tahimana, a couple of other people. And I was like, "Oh, what are you up to?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I really need to go. I need to find a flat." And Mikey's like, "Oh, yeah, our flatmate's moving out. Come check it out." So it ended up being one of those moments. So, but one of the first things I did when I was living with Mikey, he had 3 CDs with 60 tracks from the Upbeats. And he's like, "Right, I'm releasing an Upbeats album, but I don't really know too much about drum and bass." And I was like, "Oh, I'm your drum and bass guy at the moment," because I was like loving it, and I'd been started ordering some records for Real Groovy for the stock.
So it was you rather than their job to curate it down to 12.
I guess they'd given him these are all our tracks.
Yeah.
And so he'd given that to me, and I'd gone through and I'd listened to them, and then I kind of told him these and my kind of short list of 20 faves, and I guess he'd kind of gone back to them with his short list, and from there they kind of
cool. So you sort of had you had definitely had a hand in putting the album together.
Yeah, and then I ended up working with Mikey on a couple of his comps further down the line, the Green Room 004 Earth or Hope, that one was.
Yeah, that's right.
And Loop Select 007 We Are Here. So both of those comps I worked alongside Mikey and Loop.
Well, in a podcast of setting out shout-outs to people that you and I respect, I think it's funny how when history's happening in the moment, things aren't looked at the way they will be in the future. That was an odd use of time things, but I'm thinking that, I think Mikey will be recognised down the track like a lot of those great New Zealand music organisers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
in a way that
absolutely.
won't happen now because it's too close to when it's happened.
Yeah.
But,
and it's still
I've
happening.
heard enough about Flying Nun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
In a way, it's not the generation for me, and it wasn't the music that spoke to me.
Oh, I don't mean I'm not dissing them, but you know what I'm saying. It's like down the track, it will be like this guy did this shit that wouldn't have happened. Yeah.
I love audio culture.
Yeah.
I love what they've done and the resource in which they have at the moment. It's such an amazing, ongoing archive and recording it all.
Yeah.
But I still find every time they pop up on my newsfeed, it is still talking about
it's a generation too far back from you.
And occasionally there'll be a feature which comes up and I'm like, oh cool, look, there's
I think that's kind of been said to me, Dylan, is that they like having me on board. A lot of it's, especially the electronic scene or whatever you want to call it, is it's stuff that happened that will just I'm not explaining that very well. It's not like there's 100 album releases or blah, blah, blah. A lot of it's just like, I remember this. I can talk to that person, they remember that. You know, talking to people like Kyan and stuff about what he did. But I get you. It's just about them getting more and more writers,
contributors who have.
I'd
that-
love to keep doing it,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of work on top of everything else.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that I've seen a few from you and Gareth shoot as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Pepperell's done some really
Yeah.
good ones as well. It wouldn't surprise me if you're a good writer, Dylan. Man, you should approach them and write something, dude.
too busy at the moment.
Yeah, that's how I
Like-
feel as well.
And the thing is, I get stuck on being too very. It has to be right. Which means it just stops me in my tracks.
You wouldn't believe how long goes into compared to other stuff I write. Those audio culture ones, I've been like you say, it's like it has to be as right as it can be.
Especially when you feel you're honouring your peers in a way, like the people
Yeah.
who you've met over the years and you respect what they've done. You don't want to do a disservice by getting something incorrect. Yeah.
Especially word. So when did you start DJing?
Okay, so here we go. Okay, 2003, moved up to Auckland,
Yeah.
and I guess it was a new start for me. I knew only a handful of people.
Yeah, it's a hard city.
Yeah, and it was like I was living out in Point Chev with my partner and her friends, so it was like it wasn't my circle of friends. I'd left this great time in Wellington, so I kind of went through a period of just like not really kind of vibing on the city. After a few weeks off, I ended up walking into Real Groovy Auckland and going, yeah, okay, yeah, can I work here? And they put me on the trades counter and was like, well, you know what to do. And basically,
Why didn't you just start there straight away if you've been at the one in Wellington?
Because I guess at that point I didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I came to
Yeah.
Auckland and was like, I could feel it out, and it was like, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And that was actually the perfect place to meet a whole lot of new people. So people started coming up, like people that worked at Real Groovy at the time would come up and introduce themselves. Oh, so you're the drum and bass guy from Wellington. Was like,
You're at the community centre for the music scenes where
Yeah.
people come to pick up their music and their flyers and their magazines and their
And this is like, just before the peak of physical sales. I think
Yeah.
physical sales peaked in 2004, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And this is 2003, so this is the heyday of releases. And,
Wow.
I took over the ordering of their Subtronics drum and bass selection. And at that point, I think I moved to Auckland with half a crate of vinyl that I'd collected over a few years. I was a CD buying guy because I was like, I just want to listen to CDs. But, I started just buying the odd 12 and the odd album on vinyl, and then...
It's bubbling up. It's happening.
Yeah. And basically it was like, okay, well, I'm in Auckland. I can, in a way, reinvent myself. I felt in Wellington I was known as the guy who worked at Real Groovy.
Yeah.
And there were these legend DJs.
Record shop guy.
And I didn't want to be a DJ. But I get to Auckland, I'm like, well, I can kind of dictate who I am to the public in a way now that I've started a new city. And
Is your hair long or is your hair short?
Short at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
cut
that
off.
bit had happened.
The ponytail was gone at that point. So I guess I just started buying a few records, and some of the guys who were working at Real Groovy were also kind of starting up, budding DJs, and they, let me come over and have a little jam on their turntables and get used to what it's like to actually play a record and then play another record after that one.
Yeah. And some older gents of the scene, Mr.
Yeah,
Rockpig.
and
Mr.
then,
Rockpig.
yeah, exactly. Like some of the people who were working there, Jason Rockpig, Tony Cooper, he was really, really supportive.
Great
at the time.
guy. Yeah.
Maury, who was still on the trades counter up until a few years ago, super supportive. So, big ups to the Real Groovy Auckland crew for, taking me under their wing and just introducing me to the Auckland scene. It doesn't, they so many people that I met over the trades counter of Real Groovy who were the Auckland music peeps,
Did you like High Fidelity?
The movie.
Oh, the movie or the book. They're both great.
I've seen the movie once. Definitely.
Does it ring a few bells?
Moments did, but not necessarily for me. For some of the other people.
No, totally.
For the people I work alongside.
I don't think Kiwis are. I was just thinking, I don't think Kiwis are brash enough to have like a Jack Black character. But God, he's good in that film.
Yeah.
He's just such an arsehole.
I haven't watched it for a while.
Oh, it's worth it, man. It's actually, you know what, bro? It's actually a romantic comedy, I think. That's actually what it is. But it's just set in a record store. It's really well done. The book's good too. I'm not a big reader of fiction, man, but whoever that writer is it Nick Hornby? I ended up smashing all of his books after reading that one. That's unusual for me. So eventually, I want to get on to talking about bass. So eventually, you ended up either in a bar or a
Rakino's,
and someone said, "Hey, jump on."
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
I went up there and was like, "Okay,
no turntables at home. Just
Yeah.
have a tutu there."
I've got a crate of records. Can I come up on a Saturday afternoon when no one's around and play some records?"
Good move.
And first time I got up there, okay, very excited. Got my crate.
Yeah.
Put the first tune on, and then looked at the second turntable and was like, "How do I listen to that one?" Realised,
Oh wow!
I hadn't brought
What is that?
headphones.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, you need headphones. Call my partner. Hey babe, can you just swing by Real Groovy and pick up a pair of headphones, put them on my account?
So you hadn't even got close to a booth at this stage during a party?
No,
Wow, amazing.
This is like nah. So yeah, I learnt lesson 1: bring headphones. And then from that point, I just played
Yeah.
songs that I had, and
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to mix. All I wanted to do was just hear the songs that I had
On a system.
on a
Yeah.
system, because I wasn't hearing those songs played anywhere else. And that's the thing. Like, I had this big CD collection because that mirrored my taste, but the DJs I heard out, I'm like, why doesn't anyone play this? Or this track's wicked, but I've never heard anyone play that. So
Yeah.
so that was the whole reason of like,
The DJ itch.
I don't want to be a DJ. I just want to hear these songs played out, because I reckon they'd go really well if you played them out. So
That sounds like a DJ.
That's how I started DJing.
And so they obviously went, that was good once you got the headphones come back, or...
Yeah, they said, that was great. You go, do you want a drink or something? I was like, I'll have a glass of Coke, thanks. Yeah. Awesome, free glass of Coke. I'll come back next Saturday, and by then it was like, do you want a beer? It was like,
Oh, my God. And then
yes,
some
please.
chips, some
yes,
chips
please.
next.
Yeah. So basically, I did that for a few weeks, and around the same time, I was doing. I think I had been doing radio for a couple of weeks at that point, and I was doing BFM.
Oh, I had no idea, Dylan.
Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, 2 till 4 a.m.
Wow.
So it was after what was a kind of goth industrial metal show, which I was fine with.
I want to flick that light on behind you. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I can see you now.
So it'd follow on from that, and after me was a woman called Hayley J. She'd played.
Not Hayley Hansel.
Yeah.
She'd do 4 to 6 in the morning.
She did 4 till 6.
That's insane.
And I do 2 till 4. So
Wow.
I'd play bits in between, from Queens of Stone Age to Jacob to
That's
Tortoise.
Coco Solid's sister, right?
Yeah.
I'd really like to get Coco Solid on the show. I don't think I've ever met her. I've emailed her, so if you know her, I'd like to get her in here to talk to her. I need more Wahine on the show.
Should be awesome.
Yeah, she would be.
So I did BFM, and then Tony Cooper, who I was working with, was like, "Hey, bro, you should call Manuel Bundy. He's starting a new radio station. He's getting DJs."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, cool." Never spoken to Manuel Bundy. Knew who he was. Knew he was a legend. Called him up. "Hey, bro, my name's Dylan. Worked with Tony at Real Groovy. Heard you're looking for some DJs." And he's like, "Yep. Basically, breakfast show's full. So is Fridays, but everything else is pretty much open." And I was like, "Oh yeah." At that point, I had Friday and Saturdays off.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, the Friday lineup's full. How about Saturday?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "What time?" And like 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock? And I was like,
No way. I know where this story's going.
And I just kind of thought, I was like, well, if I'm out on a Friday night, yeah, sweet. I was like, 2 o'clock is fine. I can get up at 1 and then do the radio at 2.
And you've had it ever since.
So yeah, and I've had it ever since the Headspace 2 o'clock start.
So I might have guessed that the unwritten thing would be that, because I know Tony, and he's actually, it's funny with Tony and getting people to radio stations. Do you must know Jin Halligan through Record Retail?
Yep.
Okay, so Jin won't mind me saying this. When he first started on BFM, his announcer, he was totally nervous, totally like puckered bum. But I was like, his music, because at the time, in my humbled opinion, mid-2000s or whatever, a lot of B's DJs were a bit average. But there was this guy, Tony, had gone on. I was like, every time I'd turn the radio on, it was B. I'd go, who the hell is DJing? It was Jin. My point is, so I'm guessing someone like Tony saying to you, who's not really known at the time, you should call Manny. That Manny knew that if Tony had said, this guy will be okay, that Yeah.
basically. And so I guess within a couple of weeks, the station filled up all its slots, and then it was like, okay, week number 1 went up. Who was doing the show before me? Chip Matthews.
You think you're quite a creature of habit in a lot of ways, eh? Like a lot of people wouldn't hold that down. Do you there's something you like about that? Well, it's not only like having a show to do every week, but there's something in that you're holding it that long, I reckon.
Absolutely. It's the show in which, after all the years of DJing, radio, various stations, various slots, and all the gigs I've ever done and all the venues, for me, the favourites were still Rakino's Wednesday night,
Yeah.
which I held down for 7 years, and the Headspace Saturday 2 o'clock. And for me, that was, I guess for 4 years, that was the twice a week I'd play. I'd do one night at Rakino's, and it was pretty quiet to begin with, and built it up, and it was the evening and the atmosphere was sculpted by the tunes I played.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday, similar thing, it's not a dance floor, it's not evening, it's not morning, I can kind of do what I like. And between those two, that's how I kind of just learnt to mix. I'd play something on a Wednesday night that would then go, I'll have to remember that little combo for Saturday, and vice versa.
I've also seen it like that with you. I think like it's your little, it's not art project, but it's your little, like it's where you get to sort of like, this is the overall composition 2 hours for the week. I've always felt like that, even the way you religiously posted and stuff, it feels to me it's like, it's like a cold cut, solid steel kind of a thing. It's where you go, this is what I do, uninterrupted by anyone or anything, or two voice breaks or whatever. I don't know how many you do.
I don't have interviews to do. I don't have to do a giveaway.
You put together a composition, 2 hour composition.
It is the most, for me, the one that represents me musically more than any other.
It's probably really nice headspace. I didn't mean to do that, but it is probably really nice headspace to get into before you go out and play a rowdy bar or whatever. Just do that first. And then
well, quite often the show is in response to something that had happened. Say on Friday night I had to play, maybe I played a drum and bass gig, and it was like a big night, like an awesome. I'm going to go in on Saturday and probably go super chill.
Yeah.
But if I played a hip hop or something else on the Friday night, maybe I do want to play a little bit of D&B, but maybe I want to also play something jazzy, or maybe on a real kind of soul tip. But it's a lot of the time it's in response to stuff I've played, and now I'm exercising the demons for the stuff I haven't had a chance to play.
Yeah. Just in the last few minutes, man, I reckon it's a real, it's a real success and tribute to sort of like just sticking to your guys' guns. That bass is still kind of going in such a shitty Auckland, radio market in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that all the other stations are shit. I'm meaning, for people who don't know, outside of our city or whatever, essentially we've got 2 huge companies who run everything. So you guys have got the station that does this thing that obviously draws listeners. It's got great DJs on it, great attitude to what you're doing and stuff. But essentially you'll never get a huge frequency the way things are going at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, just how long you been there in that PD role now? 10 years? Nah, is that too long?
Nah, almost. 9 years. Yeah, I started 2008.
So, I mean, this is a really broad question, man, but kind of walk us through it. How have you kept it going? What have been the challenges? You've had to move,
Maybe going back to what you were saying, being a bit of a creature of habit, like I stayed at Real Groovy for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time was like, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so very in my niche when I was in that store that I was really kind of, I couldn't imagine myself working on a label side of things or any other retail, because Real Groovy was different to your tracks and your sound stores. And then when the opportunity to come on as a part-time PD, that was essentially looking after making sure the roster was filled and following up on DJs, and also looking after bringing in the CD of the week and make sure there's a bit of new music coming through, and adding that to what wasn't a playlist in as far as you have to play the song, but just the playlist, which was the backup music for when there's no DJs. So that's the role I came in on, and then after a while, Real Groovy, I was doing both that and Real Groovy for a few months. And then Real Groovy went into receivership, was the time I left. Went full-time into bass and continued that role further, but then took on the breakfast show not long after as well. So was basically having to get to know what each DJ, get to know their names, because a lot of them I knew them by DJ names, but then Jazz, who owns Bass FM, would be like, oh, blah, 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 Stephen. And I'd be like...
Mr. Brown!
And I'd be like, who's Stephen?
It's Mr. Brown, mate.
I should be like, Selecto. And I was like, oh, is his name Stephen?
Oh, that's Stephen.
Cool. Yeah,
the other Stephen's
exactly,
Mr. Brown.
You know,
right?
there's people knowing them by their first names.
Stephen.
And I was like, okay, so starting to really, get to know who these DJs are as people instead of just a DJ.
Yeah.
But they were people who I knew their sound and I knew their voice, but I didn't know them personally until like at a DJ meeting, you're like, oh, right, yeah.
Wow,
you get
right,
to
yeah,
meet these
yeah,
people.
I even met them, yeah.
So, and I guess, basically, because Jazz is good, like, full credit to Jasmine Zidane, owner of Bass FM.
Yeah.
She has a great talent of being able to basically get by on...
A shoestring.
Basically, yeah, she knows how to stretch resources. She knows how to get a good deal. And basically make things work on as little as possible. And that's how Bass FM has pretty much operated since she bought it off George back in 2008. So obviously 100% independently owned and operated. And because that was her talent there, mine was like, I'm this music guy and something goes wrong because I was such a geek in school and I was like, signal flow, sweet, okay.
Yeah.
Someone goes, left side's not working. I'm like, diagnose it within 2 seconds.
So
it's like,
yeah.
Is it the head shell? Is it the turntables? RCA? What is it? I think that was a key thing, is just being able to diagnose technical faults within the studio, because
not having to call someone in all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and so that was a good thing. I started to learn all this other stuff, but it was really kind of been, in a way, and I don't like using this word, but I don't know if it's the correct response for it, but like musical gatekeeper in this response as to what is bass and what isn't bass. Because I remember reading an article on the spin-off around these kind of like these musical gatekeepers that were kind of holding, were in charge of these musical institutions and really being kind of very close-minded on how they operate things. But for me, it was what is bass and what isn't bass, and it's still, I guess, have loosened up over the last few years. But in the beginning, it wasn't pop music.
Yeah.
It wasn't rock music. It wasn't indie music.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't house music at that point either.
But there's a lot of funky black house music.
Yeah. But because at the point it was...
a bunch of us just kept playing it whether you liked it or not.
Well, no, it really was... There was Bass FM and there was George FM.
Yeah.
Set up by the same people.
And house is such a huge genre.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of crossover, but bass was there to represent the side that George didn't represent at that point.
Freaky, yeah.
Which was beats on the hip hop tip, but not hip hop as in on that kind of boom bap.
Yeah.
It was the kind of reggae and the roots flavor. We had a few drum and bass shows, and then there was a few kind of weirdly eclectic.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a cerebral element of the music to there going on as well. But it's really funny.
And then stuff like The Basement and...
exactly.
Yeah,
but I guess over the years...
Ring the Alarm and all sorts,
Over the years, like, it still have wrestled it away from going too much into a particular direction. Like, there's not much on the trap type of hip-hop, which is kind of very... Now, for the last 4 years, has been that kind of... Occasional elements of that, but it's not Migos. I don't know. I don't even know the name of those songs, but... Sorry.
I was talking. This is quite reductive, bro. But we're really nerding out here, so why not? I was talking to someone about that. I was talking to Leon Dahl about that. I had him on the podcast, and what I hear with trap, I'm not. What's the word? I'm not evaluating whatever. There's good and bad, everything. But the actual production of it, I reckon it's a real. It's a sign of the technology that we use now. You can tell it's made on something like that over there. It's pad-based music, It really is. I think it's really born of that. The fact that that's how a lot of people make music now. I'm pointing to the machine up there.
Yeah.
So your idea has been you've actually got to listen a lot, because if you hear it going too far one way over a few weeks or months, you've got to just go.
And there's times in which I've stopped myself and I've played a tune that's gotten into the track, and then I guess the other thing with a lot of this kind of music is that there may be a hook or a vocal which is like, can you swear on this?
I think I have a few times.
Okay, but anyway, there might just be like one word which is just over and over again. I'm like, what are we listening? Like,
What is this shit?
yeah, what is this shit? And I've kind of just echoed it out and pulled back and jumped on the mic and was like, oh, apologies for that one. Hadn't checked how, I was like,
Still in a
gave that
constant
one a
quality
skim.
control.
But
What I've never known you to do,
Yeah.
to your credit, is actually come in and say, don't play that. You don't do that.
I think
Maybe I was lucky.
there's diplomatic ways in which we try to communicate the information.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is in the process before that DJ's even joined the station.
Yeah.
Because obviously still fielding emails of DJs that want to come up, and you go, okay, sweet as, have you got a mix that we can check out? Or send me a list of the stuff in which your favourite or you go to, so I can get an idea of where they sit musically. And a lot of people haven't even listened to bass, so you want to
He's made me realise there's another whole phenomena there, whereby when you and I came up, there wasn't DJ school, but where I'm teaching at the moment, there is a major
Exactly.
that is spitting out, DJs, well taught, great course, great tutors
Yeah.
that you and I both know, but there's all of that as well, eh? So there's more people, I was going to say in the mix, but there's more people just out there trying to have their hand at it.
And for me, when it comes to a DJ, I'd rather someone who has a great taste in music, who is just a selector who can't mix, rather than someone who's like got the mad skills, technical skills, but the tunes are just like leave me cold.
Yeah.
I want for every song to have some kind of emotional response to someone out there that's listening.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for you, you're like, this tune there's a reason why I'm playing this.
It's such a damn shame that when I got the sub in my car and stuff, that the way our broadcast laws are here, that I couldn't get you guys in my car a lot of the time. So I wanted to ask them more about that sort of side of stuff. Like, how do you? Because I noticed you said you've expanded your frequency some places and so on. How do you guys push that to the limit without getting in trouble? Not that I'm saying, by the way, that you guys operate that way, that you're like, oh, well, how far can we? But, it's just out of pure interest, because you'd know it better than me, even though I kind of teach in this area. Like, what are you allowed to do, and where do you have to stop? I'm talking here, folks, about picking up the station. It's what's called low power FM, for those who don't know, and I think that means legally it's within a few kilometre radius. But the signal's never as good, obviously, as a big butty, The Edge or BFM signal or whatever.
Okay, so legally, low power FM is supposed to broadcast on half a watt or 1 watt, I don't know, something pretty low. We have someone who takes care of the full technical side of things, so it's up to him, and I'm always like, can we just crank it up a little bit?
Just got it.
But essentially, Auckland is so crowded, the radio market, that we, being on 107.3 broadcasting out of Grey Lynn, there may be another one in 107.3 out in Howick, and there's
not
another one
even around here, bro.
in,
There's a guy that plays really average jazz. If I go turn up the wrong street here,
exactly, and he broadcasts from over Linfield ways. He's been a pain in the ass since 2008. Before he came on board, we actually had a pretty good West Auckland coverage, and then he basically took it over because the LPFM users don't own a license. They don't pay for the use of that frequency. It's like a hobbyist's kind of setup. So anyone can broadcast from anywhere, but there's a kind of a gentleman's agreement that you won't do it within X amount of, within range of someone else and cut into theirs.
Would it be fair for me to say that, sorry, cut you off there, like that profile-wise, brand-wise, dedication-wise, hours spent of DJs-wise, that you guys are the most prominent? You must be the most prominent low-power FM station in Auckland at the moment, surely.
I'd say within Auckland, for sure.
RPFM's gone, right?
I don't know what happened there. But definitely. And I think if we existed solely as an LPFM, I don't think we'd still be here now. It's the fact that we got onto Freeview from the moment that Freeview launched in 2008. So that's another thing Jazz did from the very beginning, was Freeview was looking for content. Bang Bang, George and Bass were both on it with Radio NZ. And the amount, more people have heard us on Freeview than they probably ever have.
Well,
on FM.
my mum's a case in point. You know, she actually really likes bass now. That's what she'll listen to. But she discovered it because I was on it, but because I left it on at the Batch.
Yeah.
And you can get it crystal clear all day out in the beautiful Coromandel, and she just has it on the TV.
I do
You
that.
know?
There's a few people. Ed G, shout out to Ed G, another person who used to travel around the country with his work. And every time he'd be in a new hotel, he'd just dial up, turn in bass, leave it on bass, make sure it was saved as a favourite or something.
So Freeview, do you get, obviously not to tell us them, but do they give you data? Do you know?
No.
But you have a gut feeling that there's more people listening to that than the internet stream, for example.
I think you can tell based on the correspondence you get from listeners. You know that people are tuned in from different parts of the country. It's not just, I guess the first 5 years, Base FM was Greyland and the edges, Point Chev and a little bit of West Auckland and Central, you know. And then from the point Freeview onwards, especially when they had to do the digital switchover, get rid of all the analogue TV stations, people that didn't want to get Sky, the only option to have TV was Freeview. And it's also just...
Now everyone's got it.
It's great that where Bass is, it's like, in a way, it's the last on the dial. If you go TV1 and then down, quite often Bass is what you hit. So the amount of people that have unwittingly discovered this Bass FM on their Freeview remote.
Totally. And one other thing I want to ask around that, and again, it might be commercially sensitive information, but I'm assuming that, because I always remember Dave, ex-Active, going, how are they affording that, mate? How are they affording that? I'm assuming that because you got in early, you are on some sort of heritage deal, because I'd imagine it'd be a very huge cost if you're on some modern market rate for it.
I don't know.
No, you don't know. Good. It's probably best you don't.
I know that we did try to get onto Sky, and they threw a figure at us at one point.
No, Sky.
I know.
Better to get on Netflix.
But they threw this figure at us, and we're like, really? It's like
insane.
All they had to do was basically flick a button because the content was there. We're already on the satellite. They've already got, all they had to do was like, oh yeah, just flick it on. But they threw this number at us, and we're like, no, whatever. And now, bum 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 bum.
God, ending there, it's quite a good place to end. Hey, I had such a long day, bro, and I was actually on the bus going, I don't know if I've got a conversation in me, but once I get started, it's also great to catch up with you, and thanks for coming in and giving up your time. Believe it or not, that's 80 minutes.
Really?
And I've still got, people often say that, eh? Yeah, and I've still got about half my little bullet points on my list, but so in there. So, Andy, what's coming up? What's the next big show you're playing at? You're looking at? You're looking forward to? We'll end there.
Okay, at the moment we are looking at doing a few Australian shows around this mixtape release. Working with Low Key Source, which is a label set up by Sam Dutch, who used to run grindin.net.
You're going to tour a Dylan C mixtape.
Yeah, basically
awesome,
he's asked me to
you.
curate all the releases from the label so far. So there's stuff from Lady Six, Razor Beezer, Has Beats, a few local cats, as well as people like Tall Black Guy, Eric Lau, House Shoes, that kind of stuff. So I've got a deadline for Friday next week to get that mix delivered to him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's looking at those shows, so it's looking like Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney shows. So 4 nights, 4 days in Australia. So that is kind of exciting, being able to, after being...
When's that earmarked for?
First week of December.
Okay, well, in there. So, Bass DJs, get all your trap records out for this first week of December. Dylan will be away. Cheers.